It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces here. So, hi everyone. Hello. Hi, Mama. How are you? Good? All right. Well, I had to say, thank you for coming, right? So, the architecture of olfaction, that was the title of my master year's project, which is essentially a reconstruction of 73 existing buildings in the heart of Tokyo. But the challenge behind that was to kind of capture this immaterial density of smell, which you can't really see, and trying to design architecture that was based on the science of fragrance and the kind of the engineering of perfume, you know. So I spent a lot of time putting this research together and trying to create architecture from essentially thin air, you know, pun intended. But, you know, the way the site exists at the moment is that it's a series of buildings that kind of house these cafes, which serve traditional Japanese foods, and there's this like thin alleyway that kind of walks through, and you know, it's a very dense sensory experience. It's quite intense. So a lot of my research was, was actually varied. So it was practical in one sense, but in the other sense, it was also theoretical. So I did a lot of site visits where I was kind of recording things like all sorts of smells, and I would make drawings like this, for example. But then it was also theoretical. You know, I was reading books like The Secret of Scent by Luca Turin and kind of manuals on perfume engineering, and I had hit a wall after gathering all of this knowledge, because it was about trying to materialize all of that information. Because how do you draw smell? You know, nobody teaches you how to do that. Like, so I had to invent my own language in a sense. You know, how do you, there's no workshop you can sign up to do that. So eventually, I decided to do what I think was right at the time, and I produced a drawing. Which is this one, actually. I was very proud of it. Is my boss here? I'm going to embarrass myself right now. So, so I'm really bad at technical things, right? Too late, Shaya. I know you're here somewhere. So, but I produced this, and my professor was actually very underwhelmed. I was proud of my work at the time, right? Very proud. But he was totally upset, because he said, you know, what is this? You know, like, are you trying to show off, or is this what, you know, they taught you on your year out? You know, I was very, very upset by that. But nevertheless, you know, without further delay, he reached for this paper that was at the back of the pile, and he kind of pointed to this drawing that was on it. It was actually that one on the right there. And he said, Usama, what is this? You know, like, you haven't been showing me these drawings. Have you been making them all along? You're hiding something from me, you know? This is it. I don't know what it is, but you need to make this real. And it made me think, it actually reminded me of something that actually I always have this kind of parallel way of thinking about things, you know. I always have an architectural solution to something, and then I have this more artistic way. But it never occurred to me that the two could actually kind of inform each other or work off each other, and that's actually a design tool to think in that way. And I think the artist in me was very excited by the fact that smell is something that you can't see. So there's this freedom of creating something that doesn't exist, right? So I made a decision, and my decision at the time was to turn my back to the rest of the class, because, you know, I would look over my shoulder, and, you know, for all the architects over here, there was like, you know, right angles everywhere. Like, everyone was creating all of these, you know, very, you know, not to discredit anyone, but they were so much more further in their projects than I was, whereas I was, you know, at this stage making all of these experimental models and conceptual stuff at the time. But really, I had decided that I needed to exit my discipline. You know, I needed to leave architecture. You know, I visited the fashion department, and I discovered neoprene. And meanwhile, this is what my desk starts to look like. And, you know, I went to the sculpture department, and I discovered Jesmonite, which is this acrylic-based plaster. You know, all of these new materials that come up, you know, and I never thought that I would be more of an artist in my final year of architecture than my entire life, because that's when I started behaving like one. I started learning new things from people who had nothing to do with the profession that I was in. And I suppose the most rewarding part of all of this is getting to a stage where once the work is done, it's to kind of to take a step back and to realize that actually I had put my foot down and I had produced something that I was proud of, that I could actually call art as well. You know, I had people coming up to me who weren't architects whatsoever at all, you know, fine artists, sculptors, who looked at my work and were really appreciating it. They didn't just see it as a piece of art, but they saw it as architecture as well. And I suppose this image over here kind of explains it in the best way. You see, at the same time I was producing this one, I was producing the image on the right, and they're both made of the same materials. They're both made of the same kind of components. It's artwork informing architecture, and architecture informing artwork. And that's when I started feeling like I'm onto something here. So when I came to my degree show, I was very nervous because everyone's work looked so different. Some might call it normal, some might call it, progressive, whatever. But I was very nervous and conscious about that. And only to find out that towards the end, I got a nomination and I got selected for the New Contemporaries Award, which is, very, very excellent news for me. But I think the New Contemporaries exhibition, thank you. The New Contemporaries exhibition was one where, you were called out for bringing something new. The word contemporary is kind of self-explanatory there, and that was the biggest achievement for me. So I went to Edinburgh and I exhibited there for 30 days. And I suppose my message is that if you want to bring something new to your field, you really need to exit your field or exit your discipline. If you're a painter or an artist, why don't you try and learn from scientists or engineers, or you don't have to. It goes both ways as well. You don't have to be a kind of a creative person to inform the creative realm. And really, I think we should all just work together, and and that's the only way we can bring something new to this. So thank you for that. Yeah.